You begin to understand that every meaningful achievement in life begins with the same foundation, the ability to discipline your mind and guide your actions. With intention instead of impulse, you realize that discipline is not something you are born with, or something only special people possess. It is something built moment by moment, choice by choice, habit by habit, and every time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen the structure of your future. You feel the truth settle deeper, the realization that your life is shaped not by what you want, but by what you are willing to work for. And what you are willing to work for is determined by your consistency, your focus, your self-control, your willingness to push through the resistance that shows up every time you reach for growth. Discipline becomes the engine that keeps you moving when motivation fades, when emotions shift, when your mind whispers that it would be easier to quit. You begin seeing discipline as a form of self-respect, because every time you follow through, you are telling yourself that your goals matter, your dreams matter, your future matters, and you matter. You learn that undisciplined living is not a lack of desire, it is a pattern of habits misaligned with your purpose. Habits built on comfort instead of clarity, survival instead of expansion, emotion instead of intention. And once you recognize this, you begin rewriting the patterns you live by. You begin choosing habits that give strength instead of stealing it. You start understanding that self-control is not about rejecting pleasure or denying joy, it is about choosing the version of yourself you want most over the moment you want now. It is about mastering impulse, mastering the pull of instant gratification, mastering the desire to escape the discomfort. That growth demands you discover that self-control is not a prison, it is freedom, the freedom to build the life you envision without being controlled by your moods, your habits, your cravings, or your fears. You begin to appreciate the quiet power of delayed gratification, the understanding that the best rewards come not from what is easy, but from what is earned. Through persistence, focus, and patience, you learn to endure the uncomfortable spaces, the early mornings, the hard decisions, the slow progress, the days when the results are invisible. And yet you continue because you trust the process more than the moment. You trust the person you are becoming more than the temporary relief of quitting. You shift your mindset away from waiting for motivation and toward creating momentum. You realize that discipline thrives, not through inspiration, but through action. Action taken even when you feel tired, even when the path feels unclear, even when your emotions are heavy. You stop asking yourself if you feel like doing the work and start telling yourself that doing the work is who you are. This simple shift transforms. Your identity transforms. Your routine transforms the level of success you allow into your life. You begin noticing that discipline grows in an environment where distractions shrink, so you look at your life with honesty and clarity and start removing the things that pull you away from your purpose. You reduce the noise, you limit the temptations, you restructure your environment to make discipline easier, and you find that removing distractions increases your strength far more than forcing yourself to resist them every day. Mindfulness becomes a strategy. Your environment becomes a tool, your focus becomes a shield. You understand deeply that discipline is not about intensity, it is about consistency. The person who shows up every day, even for a short time, will always outperform the person who goes hard for a moment and disappears for weeks. You realize that small daily actions compound into powerful long-term results, and this truth gives you freedom because you no longer pressure yourself to be perfect. You simply commit to being present. You commit to showing up. You commit to building your future with steady hands and steady habits. You discover that mental toughness is not about being emotionless or unbreakable. It is about being adaptable. It is about being the kind of person who continues even when conditions are not ideal, even when confidence wavers, even when uncertainty rises. You realize that toughness is grown through challenges, not comfort. Through resilience, not avoidance, through courage, not convenience, and every time you push through discomfort without running, every time you choose effort over excuses, every time you adapt instead of retreat, you strengthen the muscle of mental toughness. You start redefining failure because failure is not the end, it is information, it is feedback, it is a teacher. And once you stop fearing failure, you free yourself to grow. You free yourself to learn. You free yourself to experiment without shame, to improve without perfection. You begin seeing mistakes as part of mastery setbacks, as part of success obstacles, as opportunities to grow your resilience, and the moment you shift your perspective, failure stops being an enemy and becomes one of your greatest allies. You begin setting standards for yourself, standards that reflect the life you want and the person you aim to be. You hold yourself accountable, not through punishment, but through purpose. You start raising your expectations, not because you are hard on yourself, but because you know you are capable of more. Discipline becomes the language you speak with your future, the commitment you make to your potential, and the promise you keep for your own evolution. You realize that success is not based on intelligence or talent, but on the ability to control your actions, control your attention, control your habits, control your decisions, and control your direction, even when life becomes overwhelming. Discipline gives you the power to choose the path of growth, even when fear whispers doubt, even when old habits call you back. Discipline becomes your anchor, your alignment, your structure, and your strength. You begin noticing that the more disciplined you become, the more confident you feel, because confidence is built on evidence, and the evidence comes from following through. You no longer rely on external validation, because you trust your own consistency. You trust your effort, you trust your ability to overcome difficulty, and this trust creates a deep internal stability that no one can take from you. And slowly, something powerful happens. You stop waiting for life to change and start taking the actions that create change. You stop hoping for transformation and start becoming the person capable of achieving it. You stop dreaming without motion and start building with intention, and every step reinforces the truth that discipline is not a burden, it is a superpower. It is the bridge between who you are and who you are becoming. This is where your journey begins, the journey of mastering yourself, mastering your thoughts, mastering your impulses, mastering your habits. Because when you master yourself, you unlock every other part of your life. And as you step forward with this awareness, you realize that discipline is not about restricting your life, it is about expanding it, expanding your potential, your strength, your freedom, your future. You feel it deeply, the shift from hoping to choosing, from drifting to directing, from reacting to leading, and you understand now that discipline is not something you do, it is someone you become. You begin to realize that discipline is built through identity, not pressure. You stop trying to force yourself into habits you do not believe belong to you, and instead you start becoming the kind of person who naturally chooses growth. You tell yourself, I am disciplined, I am focused, I follow through, even before your habits match that identity. Because you understand that identity shapes action and your action shapes reality, you step into the version of yourself who acts with purpose even on the days when your feelings try to lead you somewhere else. You notice that the more you commit to small promises, the more powerful your sense of self becomes, because discipline grows from within. And it is watered through self-trust. Every promise you keep says, I can rely on myself. Every promise you break whispers that you cannot, and so you begin choosing carefully. You do not overwhelm yourself with unrealistic demands, you simply commit to actions that reinforce your strength, and each time you follow through, your discipline grows deeper, more natural, more integrated into who you are becoming. You start mastering the art of removing excuses, because excuses feel comforting in the moment, but they cost you your future. You stop saying, I will start tomorrow. You stop saying, I am too tired. You stop waiting for motivation or clarity or the perfect conditions. You learn that discipline means doing the work regardless of the environment, regardless of how you feel, regardless of what obstacles appear. You develop the strength to move, even when movement feels heavy, and this ability becomes one of your greatest advantages. You begin understanding that discipline is built in the silence of your daily life, not in the dramatic moments, but in the quiet ones. The decision to wake up early, the choice to stay focused, the commitment to do what matters. Even when no one is watching, discipline is not loud, it is patient, it is steady. It is the invisible force shaping your future, one consistent moment at a time, and you start appreciating this quiet power because you know that these small, unseen actions are building a foundation stronger than any burst of short-term motivation. You start seeing time differently. You recognize that discipline is not about doing everything, it is about doing the right things with intention. You stop scattering your energy, you stop chasing every impulse. You stop filling your days with distractions disguised as productivity, and instead you choose the tasks that truly move your life forward. You choose focus over chaos, clarity over confusion, purpose over noise. And as you reclaim your time, you reclaim your direction. You realize that mental toughness is not about grinding until you break it, is about strengthening your mind until challenges no longer shake you. You begin practicing presence. You begin regulating your emotions. You begin choosing thoughts that empower instead of thoughts that limit you. Understand that your mind will try to protect you from discomfort. But growth lives inside discomfort. So you train your mind to push past the initial resistance, to stay calm through difficulty, to rise above discouragement. And the more you practice this, the stronger your mental resilience becomes. You learn the power of discipline through routine. A routine becomes the structure that holds your goals together, even when life becomes unpredictable. You no longer leave your progress to chance. You create rhythms that support your future, morning routines that ground you, evening routines that reset you, habits that shape your day with purpose. And because of these routines, you stop relying on motivation and start relying on structure you create. A life where success is not random, it is engineered. You begin to understand the importance of saying no, because every time you say yes to something unimportant, you are saying no to your own growth. You learn to protect your energy, your time, your attention with boundaries that honor your path. You choose relationships that support your discipline. You choose environments that reinforce your goals. You choose priorities that reflect your purpose. And you start walking away from what pulls you backward without guilt. Discipline becomes a filter separating what strengthens you from what weakens you. You start building tolerance for discomfort because you realize that everything you want requires the discomfort of starting, the discomfort of trying, the discomfort of failing, the discomfort of learning, the discomfort of being patient, the discomfort of not yet seeing results. You teach yourself to breathe through discomfort instead of escaping it, to lean into the challenge instead of resisting it. And slowly you discover that discomfort is not a threat, it is a signal that you are expanding into a stronger version of yourself. You begin to appreciate that discipline is not about removing emotion from your life, but about learning to act beyond emotion. You do not wait to feel ready. You do not wait to feel confident. You do not wait to feel motivated. You simply begin, because discipline means leading with intention, not with mood. Your emotional state becomes information, not instruction, and with this shift you free yourself from the limitations of inconsistent feelings. Because you understand now that your actions create clarity, and clarity creates momentum. You learn that willpower alone cannot carry you forever, and so you begin designing your environment to support your discipline. You remove distractions from your space. You replace them with cues that trigger productivity. You simplify your surroundings to reduce friction, and because your environment is now aligned with your goals, your discipline becomes easier. You realize that success is not about fighting through temptation, but about eliminating it where possible. You structure your life in a way that supports the version of you that you are striving to become. You begin cultivating patience with yourself, because discipline is not about perfection, it is about persistence. You acknowledge that progress is rarely linear, that you will face setbacks, that you will have slow days and moments of doubt. And none of that means you are failing. You learn to give yourself grace without letting yourself off the hook, to rest, without quitting, to reset, without losing faith. Discipline becomes a long-term relationship with your future, not a short-term test of intensity. You start embracing the truth that distraction is the enemy of success, because distraction steals your focus, and without focus, discipline cannot thrive. So you remove the digital noise, you reduce pointless scrolling, you limit empty entertainment, you become mindful of what you consume and how it affects your energy. You build mental clarity by limiting mental clutter, and the quieter your mind becomes, the stronger your discipline grows. You begin valuing the power of intention. Intention shapes your choices, intention directs your attention, intention gives purpose to your actions. And once you begin living with intention, discipline becomes easier, because you are no longer moving through life unconsciously. You are choosing your steps, you are selecting your priorities, you are creating meaning in everything you do. Intention transforms routine into purpose, and purpose transforms discipline into fulfillment. You begin seeing challenges as tests, not threats, tests that allow you to practice resilience, tests that strengthen your self-control, tests that build your mental toughness. You understand that every challenge is shaping the qualities you need for the life you want. And because of this, you stop resisting challenges. You start using them, you start studying them, you start learning from them, and they no longer intimidate you because you know they are preparing you for the next level of your growth. You recognize that self-discipline is the highest form of self-love, because when you discipline your life, you protect your future. When you discipline your habits, you free yourself from regret. When you discipline your mind, you create inner peace. Discipline becomes an expression of care for the person you are becoming. You no longer see discipline as punishment, but as empowerment, as devotion to the future you deserve. And as you internalize all these truths, you realize something profound. Discipline is not a battle. Discipline is a lifestyle, a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of choosing with clarity and strength and courage. And little by little, you begin stepping fully into that lifestyle, and the moment you do, your life begins to shift. You begin noticing that the more disciplined you become, the more alive you feel, because discipline gives you direction, and direction gives you purpose. You stop waking up just to get through the day. You start waking up to shape it, to lead it, to use it as a stepping stone towards something bigger, something meaningful, something that belongs to you. You look at each morning as an opportunity, not a burden, and this shift awakens a new level of confidence within you. You realize that discipline is not supposed to feel easy at first. It is supposed to feel unfamiliar, because you are building new neural pathways, new habits, new routines, new standards. You understand now that growth requires friction, that you cannot evolve while staying comfortable, and because you know this, you stop running from the discomfort of discipline. You embrace it, you expect it, you even welcome it, because deep inside you know that every moment of resistance is also a moment of transformation. You start treating your goals like commitments instead of wishes, because wishing gives you hope, but commitment gives you results. You write your goals with clarity. You speak them with intention. You act on them with consistency until they become ingrained into your daily life. And through this commitment, your discipline strengthens, because now you are no longer acting out of impulse. You are acting out of clarity. You are moving toward a direction you have chosen instead of drifting through life without purpose. You begin to see that discipline grows stronger when you eliminate decision fatigue. You understand that too many choices drain your energy and weaken your self-control, so you simplify your routines. You create structure for your morning, structure for your evening, structure for your work. You create predictable patterns that reduce unnecessary decisions and free your mind to focus on what truly matters. And as your routines solidify, your discipline becomes easier, because now you're working with your mind instead of against it. You begin sharpening your awareness of the distractions that drain your progress, the subtle ones, the comfortable ones, the ones that feel harmless but slowly weaken your focus. You notice how minutes get lost, how momentum gets disrupted, how your energy scatters, and once you see it clearly, you start protecting your attention. With intention, you turn off what pulls you away. You limit what drains you. You step back from anything that steals your focus without giving you value, and each boundary you set strengthens your discipline from the inside out. You start seeing discipline as a form of emotional maturity, the ability to choose action over impulse, clarity over confusion, purpose over pleasure, patience over panic. You understand now that discipline requires mastery over your inner world, because the mind will always look for the path of least resistance. Your emotions will always choose comfort. Your habits will always return to what is familiar unless you choose differently, unless you guide yourself toward what elevates you instead of what comforts you. And this ability to lead yourself becomes one of the greatest signs of inner strength. You begin measuring progress not by how fast you move, but by how consistently you show up. You stop comparing your pace to others. You stop judging your progress through the lens of perfection, and instead you focus on steady effort. Steady improvement, steady elevation. Discipline teaches you to appreciate the journey instead of rushing toward the destination. It teaches you to fall in love with the process. Because the process is where you grow. The process is where you change. The process is where you build the habits that shape your life. You start understanding that the gap between who you are and who you want to be is bridged through discipline, not luck, not talent, not timing, but daily dedication. You realize that every disciplined action is a vote for your future self, and every undisciplined action is a vote for your past self, and this truth empowers you. Because it means your destiny is not random, your destiny is designed by the habits you choose, designed by the standards you uphold, designed by the discipline you practice. You begin embracing the truth that your mind can be trained just like your body. You can strengthen your focus, you can strengthen your patience, you can strengthen your self-control. You can strengthen your resilience, and the more you practice discipline, the stronger these mental muscles become you. Learn to catch your impulses before they control you. You learn to break patterns that once held you back. You learn to guide your mind toward clarity and away from chaos. And once your mind strengthens, your life follows. You start identifying the excuses dressed as logic, the excuses that sound reasonable but sabotage your growth, the excuses that keep you in comfort but take you away from your purpose. You begin confronting them with honesty, because excuses lose power when exposed, and they lose their influence when replaced with action. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop giving yourself permission to quit when things become uncomfortable. You stop letting momentary feelings dictate long-term outcomes. This shift elevates the way you move through life. You start embracing the power of repetition, the understanding that mastery is built through doing the same thing again and again with intention. Discipline becomes your training ground, the place where you refine your habits, refine your focus, refine your resilience. Repetition becomes the vehicle that engraves success into your identity, and through this repetition you begin living with consistency instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, creation instead of procrastination. You begin realizing that discipline requires honesty with yourself, honesty about your patterns, honesty about your weaknesses, honesty about your limitations, honesty about the areas you need to improve. You look at your life without defense, without excuses, without denial. And this honesty becomes liberating, because once you see the truth, you can change it. Once you acknowledge the problem, you can solve it. Once you recognize the pattern, you can break it. Honesty becomes the doorway to disciplined transformation. You start understanding that discipline grows through delayed gratification, the willingness to hold off on what you want now for what you want most later. And once you internalize this, your life begins to shift. Because now you choose long-term gain over short-term relief. Now you choose growth over comfort. Now you choose consistency over impulse. You train your mind to see beyond the moment and into your future, and this ability to prioritize your future self becomes one of your greatest strengths. You begin celebrating consistency instead of waiting for grand achievements. You acknowledge every small victory, every moment of resistance, overcome every decision aligned with your growth, and through this your motivation strengthens, because you are no longer chasing distant outcomes. You are acknowledging the power of each step, each action, each effort. You begin seeing discipline as a daily celebration of who you are becoming. You start letting go of the belief that discipline means restriction, because discipline is not about limiting your life, it is about elevating it. Discipline is choosing what aligns with your future instead of what satisfies. The moment discipline is the key that unlocks freedom, freedom from regret, freedom from chaos, freedom from being controlled by impulses. And once you understand this, discipline becomes an empowering force, not a limiting one. You begin stepping into a deeper truth, the truth that discipline is not just a habit. It is a lifestyle, a mindset, a way of existing in the world. And as you integrate this truth into every part of your life, something profound happens. Your self-respect grows, your confidence grows, your direction becomes clearer, your purpose becomes stronger, and you begin walking with a level of focus and intention that opens doors you once thought were out of reach. This is the transformation. Discipline creates not just better habits, not just better routines, but a better you, a stronger you, a more grounded you, a more capable you. And as you continue on this journey, you realize that discipline is not the path to your future. Discipline is the power that builds it. You begin noticing that the stronger your discipline becomes, the more your self-image evolves, because discipline reshapes how you see yourself. It rebuilds the identity you carry internally. You stop viewing yourself as someone who struggles to follow through, and you start seeing yourself as someone who keeps commitments, someone who shows up, someone who finishes what they start, someone who chooses growth even when it feels inconvenient. This shift in identity becomes one of the greatest gifts discipline brings. You begin realizing that self-discipline is not about forcing yourself, it is about guiding yourself. You no longer rely on bursts of motivation. You rely on structure, intention, and clarity. You understand that motivation is a spark, but discipline is the engine. It is the force that keeps you moving when the excitement fades, when the novelty disappears, when the journey becomes challenging. Discipline carries you through the moments when motivation is nowhere to be found, and because of this, you grow stronger, steadier, and more resilient than ever before. You start treating discipline like a relationship requiring care, honesty, consistency, and effort. You tend to it daily, you invest in it just like you would any important connection, because the more you nurture it, the more it gives back. Discipline becomes something you trust, something you rely on, something that anchors you when life becomes chaotic and unpredictable. You begin understanding that your environment plays a powerful role in shaping your discipline. So you start building an environment that supports the person you are becoming instead of the person you used to be. You remove temptations, you eliminate clutter, you create space for focus. You arrange your surroundings with intention, and every choice in your environment becomes a message you send to yourself, a message that says, I am committed. I am focused. I am serious about where I am going. You start paying attention to the way your habits shape your identity and the way your identity shapes your habits. You repeat the actions of the person you want to become until you become them. You wake up earlier because that is what a disciplined person does. You respect your time because that is what a disciplined person does. You care for your mind and your energy because that is what a disciplined person does. And the more you act in alignment with this identity, the more natural it becomes. Discipline becomes less of an effort and more of a lifestyle. You begin recognizing that discipline requires eliminating the noise, both external and internal. You start reducing the voices that distract you, the opinions that confuse you, the influences that weaken your focus. You choose silence when needed because silence strengthens your clarity. You choose solitude when necessary because solitude strengthens your direction. You choose boundaries because boundaries protect the progress you are making, and with every layer of noise you remove, your discipline becomes sharper. You start realizing that one of the greatest obstacles to discipline is emotional impulsiveness, the moments when your feelings try to overrule your future. You begin learning how to pause, how to breathe, how to observe your emotions without obeying them. You start understanding that emotions are temporary, but consequences are lasting. So you learn to make decisions based on your values and your goals, not your moods, and the more you practice this, the more powerful your self-control becomes. You begin mastering the art of starting, even when you do not feel ready. You understand that waiting for the perfect moment is the fastest route to stagnation. Growth begins when you move, not when you wait. You push yourself to begin. Because action creates momentum, and momentum creates progress. And once progress begins, discipline becomes easier to maintain. You stop seeking perfection and start valuing initiation. Because every step forward, no matter how small, builds the foundation for your success. You start noticing that disciplined people do not rely on willpower alone. They build systems that remove friction, simplify choices, and conserve mental energy. You start implementing small systems in your life, systems for work, systems for rest, systems for fitness, systems for growth. And through these systems, you reduce chaos and increase consistency. Your life becomes smoother, more intentional, more predictable, and this predictability strengthens your discipline. You begin treating your time like a sacred resource, not something to waste, not something to trade for distractions. You protect your hours with the same seriousness you would protect your money or your health, because time is the one resource you cannot replenish. You start tracking where your time actually goes. You start noticing the minutes lost to scrolling, to procrastination, to hesitation. And once you become aware, you take control. You redirect those minutes into actions that elevate your life instead of draining it. You start valuing the discipline of rest just as much as the discipline of effort. You understand that burnout is not a sign of strength, but a sign of imbalance. You begin resting with intention instead of guilt, and in this balance you find sustainable growth. Sustainable focus, sustainable focus, sustainable clarity. Discipline is not about pushing endlessly. It is about balancing effort with recovery, action with reflection, moving forward with tuning inward, and this balance becomes the key to long-term success. You begin understanding that disciplined people are not fearless, they simply act despite fear. You stop waiting for fear to disappear. You stop waiting for confidence to magically appear. You take action even when you feel uncertain, even when you feel hesitant, even when your mind doubts your capacity, because you know that courage grows only through action, and each time you act despite fear, you strengthen your discipline and expand your comfort zone. You start detaching from the need for immediate results because discipline teaches you patience. You stop seeking instant validation and start trusting long-term effort. You understand that the seeds you plant today may take months or years to grow, but they will grow as long as you nurture them. You begin valuing consistency over rapid results, persistence over perfection, progress over speed. Discipline becomes the art of trusting the process even when the results are not yet visible. You begin mastering the discipline of saying no, not out of guilt but out of clarity. You realize that every yes is a commitment. Every yes takes time. Every yes consumes energy, so you become selective. You say no to distractions, no to obligations that drain you, no to people who pull you backward. And with every no, you strengthen your direction, you reclaim your time, you protect your focus, and you create space for what truly matters in your life. You start accepting that discipline is not always glamorous, it is built in. Quiet moments and private decisions and invisible efforts. The world sees achievements, but discipline sees the hours behind those achievements. The unseen choices, the lonely nights, the early mornings, the sacrifices. Discipline is built in silence, long before it shines in public, and once you embrace this truth, you stop seeking praise for your effort, and instead you focus on the process that shapes you. You begin understanding that discipline requires faith, faith in yourself, faith in your future, faith in the journey you are choosing. This faith becomes your grounding force. When obstacles arise, when setbacks appear, when progress slows, you hold on to your commitment because you trust the long-term vision you carry within you. Discipline becomes a form of devotion, devotion to your potential, devotion to your growth, devotion to your growth, devotion to the life you are creating. You begin realizing that the most disciplined people are not the ones who never stop starting again. They do not let a bad day turn into a bad week, and a bad week turn into a bad month. They realign quickly, they recalibrate, immediately, they return to their path with renewed clarity. You start adopting this mindset, you stop punishing yourself for slip-ups, and instead, you reset, you return. You recommit because discipline is not perfection. Discipline is not perfection. Discipline is persistence. Through all of this, you begin experiencing a powerful shift. Discipline is no longer something you embody. It becomes your default response, your natural rhythm, your way of moving through the world, and as this shift solidifies, your life transforms from the inside out. You begin noticing that discipline strengthens your ability to lead yourself, because self-leadership is the foundation of every meaningful transformation. You can only rise as high as the standards you hold for yourself. You can only move as far as the boundaries you set. You can only grow as much as the responsibilities you are willing to take on, and discipline helps you claim complete ownership of your life, your choices, your habits, your direction. You start understanding that disciplined people do not wait for ideal circumstances. Because they know ideal circumstances almost never appear, they create their own momentum. They push forward regardless of what life looks like around them. They do not wait for the day to feel perfect before they begin. They make the day work for them. They understand that discipline is built in real life, not imperfectly. Aligned moments, so you learn to work with what you have, not with what you wish you had. And this adaptability becomes one of your greatest advantages. You begin noticing that discipline sharpens your intuition, because when you reduce distractions and strengthen your focus, you hear yourself more clearly. You hear the difference between impulse and instinct, between fear and wisdom, between comfort and calling. You learn to trust the voice within you, because discipline quiets the noise around you, and in that quiet you discover direction, clarity, purpose, and guidance. You begin understanding that every disciplined action strengthens your personal power, the power to decide, the power to grow, the power to shape the course of your life. You start feeling less controlled by circumstances and more in control of your responses. You start feeling less pushed by the world and more guided by your own inner compass. This sense of inner power becomes one of the most transformative outcomes of discipline. You realize that disciplined people are not the ones with the easiest lives. They are the ones who make strong decisions in difficult moments. They choose action even when it is hard. They choose consistency even when it is uncomfortable. They choose responsibility even when excuses feel easier, and the more you practice these choices, the more resilient you become, the more you trust yourself, the more unstoppable you feel. You begin discovering that discipline is a form of self-respect. The more disciplined you become, the more respect you feel toward yourself, because discipline proves that you are someone who honors your word, someone who protects their goals, someone who is capable of building the life they envision. You feel this self-respect grow with each day you follow through, each habit you strengthen, each temptation you resist, and this rising self-respect becomes fuel for even deeper discipline. You realize that discipline creates confidence, because confidence is not built by feeling good about yourself. Confidence is built by keeping promises to yourself. When you say you will wake up early, and you do it when you say you will work on your goals, and you do it when you say you will improve your habits, and you follow through, your brain learns to trust you. Your self-belief grows, and this confidence becomes unshakable because it is built on evidence, not hope. You begin separating your identity from your past actions, because discipline teaches you that who you were does not limit who you can become. You stop labeling yourself by your old habits. You stop defining yourself by your previous mistakes. You stop believing the outdated story of a version of you that no longer exists. Discipline allows you to rewrite your identity, to write a story based on your actions today, not your patterns yesterday, and this liberation opens a new level of possibility. You start realizing that discipline helps you build momentum, and momentum becomes your greatest ally. Because once you begin stacking consistent action, each day becomes easier, each decision becomes smoother, each effort becomes more natural. Momentum carries you forward even on days when your energy is low or your motivation is missing. Discipline gives you the push, and momentum keeps you moving. Momentum becomes the invisible force that shapes your long-term success. You begin understanding the power of delayed gratification, not as a sacrifice, but as a strategy. You realize that every moment you resist an impulse, you strengthen your ability to choose long-term benefit over short-term pleasure. You learn to value the reward at the end of the process instead of the comfort at the beginning of it, and this ability to think long-term separates those who succeed from those who only dream. Long-term thinking becomes a defining trait of your disciplined identity. You begin valuing simplicity. You remove the unnecessary complexity that once exhausted your mind and drained your energy. You simplify your routines. You simplify your goals. You simplify your focus. You realize that when the path is simple, discipline becomes easier, consistency becomes natural, and progress becomes inevitable. The more you simplify, the more you achieve, because complexity steals energy while clarity creates momentum. You start building rituals that align with your future self, not elaborate rituals, not rituals that depend on perfect circumstances, but small repeated actions that elevate your mindset, your habits, and your state of being. You begin treating your morning like a foundation. You treat your evening like a reset. You treat your work like a mission. And these rituals become anchors that steady you through the chaos of life. You start taking responsibility for the energy you bring into each day. You stop blaming distractions when you can create boundaries. You stop blaming circumstances when you can create systems. You stop blaming a lack of motivation when you can create discipline. This shift into responsibility strengthens your identity and frees you from the idea that success depends on luck or external conditions. You realize success depends on the inner world you are building each day. You begin understanding that disciplined people are not emotionless. They simply refuse to let their emotions control their actions. They feel tired, but they still move. They feel unmotivated, but they still show up. They feel fear, but they still take steps forward. They feel doubt, but they still try. Disciplined people experience the full range of human emotion, but they choose to act with intention, not impulse, and you begin embracing this mindset, not to suppress your feelings, but to guide them. You start appreciating the power of micro-discipline, the 5-minute decisions, the tiny choices, the moments where you decide between staying the same or growing a little more. You begin noticing that it is never the big dramatic changes that transform a life. It is the tiny, consistent choices repeated day after day, small upgrades. Compound into massive results. Micro-discipline becomes your secret weapon because it is sustainable and powerful at the same time. You begin strengthening your mental toughness by training your response to discomfort. You stop retreating the moment something feels hard. You breathe through it. You remind yourself that discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is a sign of expansion. Discomfort is your brain stretching beyond old limits. And each time you lean into discomfort instead of running from it, your mental toughness grows thicker, stronger, more resilient. You start understanding that discipline allows you to build a future you no longer need to escape from because you are designing it, intentionally shaping it through consistent effort, removing what drains you, adding what strengthens. You choosing what aligns with your purpose. You no longer feel lost in your own life. You feel connected. You feel purposeful. You feel powerful because discipline creates a life that feels good from the inside out. You begin realizing that the more disciplined you become, the more freedom you gain. Freedom from procrastination, freedom from overwhelm, freedom from regret, freedom from living the same year, repeatedly freedom from being controlled by impulses and emotions. Discipline is the path to a life that feels calm, focused, fulfilling, and meaningful. And as you integrate these truths, you can feel something profound shifting inside you. A new version of you is forming one decision at a time, one habit at a time, one act of discipline at a time. You are no longer trying to become disciplined. You are becoming someone for whom discipline is natural, effortless, and aligned with who you are. And this transformation is only just beginning. You begin to notice that your relationship with time transforms as your discipline grows, because you no longer move through your days reactively, you move through them intentionally. You no longer wait for the right time, you create the right time. You no longer allow hours to slip through your fingers without direction. You shape each hour into something meaningful, something productive, something aligned with your future. You start valuing time not as something to spend, but as something to invest, and every investment builds a stronger, more powerful version of you. You begin to understand that disciplined people do not entertain the illusion that they can manage everything perfectly. They simply manage what matters most. They choose a clear focus each day, they prioritize with intention, they place their energy where it will have the greatest impact. And this selective focus makes their progress faster, clearer, cleaner. You begin releasing the pressure to do it all and instead choose to do what matters most, and through this discipline your efficiency multiplies. You start recognizing that discipline is deeply connected to your values. Your habits reflect what you consider important. So you begin redefining your values with honesty and clarity. If growth is important, you build habits that push you forward. If health is important, you build habits that nourish your body. If peace is important, you build habits that quiet your mind. Discipline becomes the practical expression of your values, and once this connection becomes clear, your choices naturally align with your deepest priorities. You begin strengthening the discipline of observation, observing your patterns, your thoughts, your impulses, your reactions. You start seeing your habits as data, not judgment. You learn from every setback, every slip, every moment of inconsistency. You begin using reflection as a tool to elevate your discipline. Instead of punishing yourself, you study yourself. Instead of criticizing your past, you improve your future. This reflective discipline becomes the key to continuous improvement. You begin realizing that self-discipline allows you to create emotional structure in your life. You stop reacting impulsively to your emotions and start responding intentionally. You learn that your feelings are not commands, they are signals. You acknowledge them without obeying them. You feel frustration, but you remain committed. You feel anxiety, but you remain grounded. You feel uncertainty, but you keep moving forward. This emotional structure strengthens your resilience and gives you a calm power that very few people ever develop. You start understanding that discipline builds trust not only with yourself, but also with the people around you. When you show up with consistency, others learn that your word means something, that your actions match your promises, that your effort reflects reliability and character. People begin to respect you more deeply because discipline is magnetic. It communicates responsibility, maturity, and strength without needing to be spoken, and this reputation becomes an unexpected benefit of the disciplined life. You begin noticing that your standards rise naturally. You no longer tolerate environments that drain your energy. You no longer tolerate relationships that diminish your progress. You no longer tolerate habits that weaken your spirit. You no longer tolerate choices that lead to regret. Your discipline becomes a filter that removes what does not serve you and protects what does, and as your standards rise, your life rises with them. You begin rewriting your internal narrative, because discipline reveals parts of yourself you never knew existed, the part of you that can stay consistent, the part of you that keeps going even when it gets hard, the part of you that is capable of more strength, more focus, more persistence than you ever believed. And as these discoveries unfold, your inner story changes. You start seeing yourself not as someone who tries, but as someone who becomes, not as someone who becomes, not as someone who attempts, but as someone who executes. This identity shift changes everything. You begin realizing that discipline is built on clarity, because clarity is the compass that guides your effort. Without clarity, discipline becomes stressful, confusing, overwhelming. But with clarity, discipline becomes smooth, intentional, empowering. You start defining what you want in detail, not vague wishes, not unclear intentions, but specific visions that energize you. You define the person you want to become, the habits you need to build, the lifestyle you want to create, and this clarity fuels your discipline with direction and purpose. You begin to understand that fear is not your enemy. Lack of discipline is fear loses its power when disciplined action steps in. Fear fades when action begins. Fear dissolves when you choose progress despite discomfort. You no longer try to eliminate fear, you outgrow it through movement, and the more disciplined you become, the less fear controls you, because discipline strengthens your courage, and courage strengthens your life. You begin experiencing the discipline of detachment, not detachment from your goals, but detachment from the need for everything to go perfectly. You stop tying your worth to your performance. You stop expecting every day to be productive, every moment to be efficient, every plan to unfold without challenges. Instead, you embrace the natural rhythm of growth, which includes difficulty, resistance, setbacks, and learning. You detach from the unrealistic expectation of perfection and attach yourself to the power of consistency. And this mindset brings peace and balance to your disciplined journey. You begin understanding that disciplined people are not carried by emotion. They are guided by vision. You stop asking yourself how you feel and start asking yourself what you are committed to. You move not according to your mood, but according to your mission. You choose effort over emotion, consistency over confusion, purpose over excuses. This shift makes your discipline unshakable, because it is no longer controlled by the ups and downs of your emotional landscape. You start recognizing that discipline is strengthened through identity alignment. When your habits align with the identity you want to embody, discipline becomes natural, not forced. When you act like the person you want to become, you become them through repetition, through commitment, through alignment. You begin asking yourself in each moment, what would the disciplined version of me do? And each time you answer that question through action, you reconstruct your identity from the inside out. You begin noticing how discipline quiets your mind. Your inner chatter begins to soften, the mental noise fades. You feel less overwhelmed, less scattered, less mentally exhausted. Because discipline creates order in your life, and where there is order, there is peace. Your mind becomes clearer, your thoughts become sharper, your emotions become steadier. A disciplined life creates an undisciplined sense of calm that feels grounding, empowering, and deeply freeing. You realize that discipline allows you to build emotional durability, the ability to remain stable even when your environment becomes unstable. You no longer crumble under pressure. You no longer panic in uncertainty. You no longer lose direction in moments of stress. Discipline trains your mind to stay steady, clear, and focused in situations that would have previously shaken you. You become emotionally tough, not through force, but through consistent inner training. You begin understanding that disciplined people do not depend on motivation, they depend on structure. Because structure sustains you. When motivation disappears, you create a rhythm, a routine, a roadmap that guides your day, and this structure becomes the force that carries you through the difficult hours, the quiet mornings, the tired evenings, the long seasons of effort. And the more structure you build, the less you rely on fleeting emotions, and the more reliable you become in your own life. You begin realizing that discipline is not just about doing what is difficult, it is about choosing what is aligned. You stop wasting your energy on battles that do not matter. You stop pouring attention into distractions that do not pay you back. You stop giving your time to things that do not match the future you want. Discipline becomes the filter that removes everything misaligned, and this alignment accelerates your progress in ways that feel almost effortless. You begin understanding that discipline is the bridge between intention and transformation. Intention gives you direction, but discipline walks you there. Intention gives you clarity, but discipline gives you results. Intention gives you hope, but discipline gives you change. You realize that dreams become reality only when they are supported by disciplined action, and this understanding becomes the turning point of your journey. And as each day passes, you can feel the shift, you can feel the internal strengthening, the clarity deepening, the identity changing. You can feel yourself rising into a new version of who you are, becoming not suddenly, but steadily, not dramatically, but powerfully, not all at once, but through consistent disciplined steps. You are no longer chasing discipline, you are becoming it. You begin realizing that discipline strengthens your ability to stay grounded in long-term thinking, because the undisciplined mind is always pulled toward the temporary, the immediate, the easy, the emotionally comfortable, but the disciplined mind sees beyond the moment, it sees the full picture, it sees the long-term benefit hidden inside temporary discomfort. And this ability to think beyond what you feel right now becomes one of the greatest mental advantages you ever develop. You notice that your patience grows naturally because discipline teaches you that valuable things take time, that meaningful change is not built in a single day, but built through repeated days, compounded effort, quiet persistence, and steady improvement. You start trusting the slow build, you start appreciating the process. You stop rushing your growth because you understand that rushing creates inconsistency, and inconsistency creates collapse. Discipline teaches you to be calm with the pace and firm with the direction. You begin to understand the difference between being busy and being productive. Busyness is chaotic, noisy, reactive, a constant state of motion without meaningful progress. But productivity is intentional. It is quiet, it is focused, it is aligned. It moves you forward instead of spinning you in circles. As your discipline strengthens, you stop trying to do everything and instead choose to master what matters. You stop equating movement with achievement and begin valuing progress over activity. Discipline brings clarity to your actions, and clarity improves every outcome. You begin taking responsibility for the life you are building, not partially, not conditionally, but fully. You stop blaming circumstances. You stop blaming your past. You stop blaming external factors. You step into truth that your habits, your decisions, your discipline, your consistency shape your entire reality. And this truth is not heavy, it is liberating. It gives you the power to rebuild any part of your life that no longer aligns with the person you want to become. You start seeing obstacles differently. Instead of viewing them as interruptions, you view them as training grounds, opportunities to strengthen your discipline, opportunities to sharpen your resolve, opportunities to reinforce your character. Challenges no longer break your focus, they refine it, because now you understand that every difficulty teaches you something, every resistance builds something, every setback strengthens something. Discipline teaches you to see challenges as allies that elevate your capacity instead of enemies that obstruct your path. You begin noticing that disciplined people speak to themselves differently. Their inner voice is not filled with excuses, hesitation, or self-doubt. Their inner dialogue is steady, direct, intentional. They remind themselves of who they are and who they are becoming. They redirect their thoughts away from weakness and toward resilience, away from fear and toward courage, away from comfort and toward growth. You begin cultivating this same inner voice, a voice that lifts you instead of limits you. And this voice becomes a powerful tool in your disciplined journey. You begin learning the discipline of consistency without intensity, because many people burn brightly for a moment and disappear, but disciplined people burn steadily. They show up every day, even if the effort is small, even if the energy is low, even if the progress is quiet. They know that consistency outperforms intensity. They know that daily actions shape destiny, and they know that slow progress is still progress. You adopt this belief, and it changes the way you show up. You no longer rely on grand moments of inspiration, you rely on steady daily dedication. You begin strengthening the discipline of simplicity. You remove the unnecessary, the dramatic, the complicated. You stop overthinking, you stop overplanning, you stop overanalyzing. You begin acting more than you explain, deciding more than you hesitate. Simplicity becomes your ally, because simplicity reduces friction, and when friction is low, momentum is high, and when momentum is high, success becomes inevitable. You realize that discipline gives you emotional clarity, because the more you strengthen your habits, the more predictable your mind becomes, Longer feel scattered, you no longer feel lost, you no longer feel caught in cycles of guilt or procrastination. Your mind becomes a place of structure, not chaos, a place of direction, not confusion, a place of purpose, not distraction. Because discipline organizes your inner world, and this inner order creates peace that feels deeply grounding. You begin seeing how discipline influences your relationships. Because disciplined people communicate more clearly, set boundaries more confidently, show up more reliably, and love more intentionally. You begin bringing this same consistency into your interactions. You become someone others can count on, someone who listens with presence, someone who communicates with honesty, someone who respects the time and energy of others. Your relationships strengthen not by chance, but by disciplined intention. You start embracing the discipline of emotional detachment from external noise. You stop absorbing opinions that do not align with your values. You stop letting criticism distract you. You stop letting compliments inflate you. You stop allowing the world to sway your inner direction. Discipline teaches you that your path is not up for public approval. Your goals are not dependent on external validation. Your growth is not determined by outside acceptance. You become grounded in yourself, and this grounding makes you unshakable. You begin to notice that your confidence is no longer fragile, because it is no longer based on outcomes, results, or circumstances. It is based on the evidence of your discipline. It is built on the hours you invested when no one was watching, the choices you made when it was uncomfortable, the actions you repeated. Despite resistance, this kind of confidence cannot be taken away, because it is rooted in who you have become, not in what you achieve. You realize that disciplined people do not seek motivation. They seek alignment, alignment with their purpose, alignment with their values, alignment with their identity. You stop searching for external energy to push you and instead create internal clarity to guide you. You begin aligning your environment with your goals, your routines, with your responsibilities, your habits, with your potential, and this alignment makes discipline feel natural instead of forced. You begin mastering the discipline of recovery, because disciplined people do not burn themselves out. They restore themselves, they recharge with intention, they rest with purpose. They understand that rest is not the opposite of discipline, it is a component of it. You begin listening to your body and giving it what it needs. You begin listening to your mind and creating space for quiet. You begin listening to your spirit and giving it room to breathe. This balanced discipline creates sustainability, and sustainability creates long-lasting success. You start noticing the discipline of decision-making becoming stronger. You waste less time hesitating. You waste less time debating. You waste less time stuck between options. You choose quickly and move forward confidently. Because disciplined, people understand that progress requires decisions, and decisions require clarity. The more decisive you become, the more powerful your momentum becomes, and this decisiveness becomes a sign of your growing inner strength. You begin understanding that discipline is not about controlling everything in your life, but about controlling the one thing that matters most. Your response. You cannot control the circumstances, but you can control your choices. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control your effort. You cannot control the timing, but you can control your preparation. Disciplined people do not waste energy fighting what they cannot control. They focus all their energy on what they can control, and this focus becomes one of your greatest strengths. You begin embracing the discipline of self-compassion, because self-compassion is not softness, it is self-respect. It is the ability to acknowledge your humanity without abandoning your discipline. It is the ability to keep going without attacking yourself. It is the ability to learn from your mistakes without living inside them. You stop punishing yourself for imperfections and start improving yourself through understanding. This compassionate discipline creates emotional stability that fuels long-term growth. You realize that the more disciplined you become, the more your life aligns with the person you are. Becoming, your habits align with your goals, your thoughts align with your values, your actions align with your identity, your decisions align with your dreams, and when all areas of your life begin working together in harmony, you feel a deep sense of inner strength and calm, the calm that comes from being in control of yourself and the strength that comes from living with purpose. And as these shifts continue to unfold, you feel yourself rising into a new version of your life with clarity, with confidence, with power, with focus. Discipline is no longer something you practice, it is something you are. As you stand here at the end of this journey, you feel something different moving through you, something steadier, something stronger, something clearer than when you began, because through every reflection, every lesson, every quiet moment of awareness, you have been rebuilding yourself from the inside out. And now discipline is not a distant idea or a motivational phrase. It is a lived experience woven into your identity, shaped by every choice you made as you moved through these words. You now understand that discipline is the path not because it is rigid, but because it is freeing. It liberates you from the pull of impulsive decisions, from the weight of unfinished intentions, from the noise of self-doubt. It gives you a structure that supports your potential, a rhythm that amplifies your focus, a foundation that steadies your future. Everything you want becomes possible when discipline becomes the language you live by. And now you feel a calm strength rising within you, a strength that comes from knowing you have the ability to follow through, to stay committed, to stand firm, regardless of circumstances. A strength that comes from realizing that your future is built by your habits, not by your hopes, by your consistency, not by your wishes, by your choices, not by the moments you feel inspired. You now carry a deeper truth. Discipline is your freedom. You recognize the shift inside your mind. The way you speak to yourself is different. The way you move through challenges is different. The way you choose your actions is different. You have stepped out of the old patterns that kept you waiting and stepped into a new identity that keeps you moving. This transformation is not loud. It is steady, not dramatic. It is lasting, not forced. It is intentional. You are no longer the person who waits for change. You are the person who creates it. As you look toward the days ahead, you feel a quiet certainty forming. You know that there will be obstacles. You know there will be distractions. You know there will be moments when you question the path. But now you have something deeper than motivation. You have discipline, and discipline is what carries you through the days when motivation disappears. Discipline is what keeps you aligned when the world becomes chaotic. Discipline is what helps you rise again and again until the result becomes inevitable. And so you walk forward with a renewed sense of purpose, with a stronger sense of self, with a clearer vision of the life you are building. Each action aligned, each habit intentional, each decision empowered. There is nothing rushed, nothing forced, nothing chaotic, just steady movement toward the version of yourself you came here to become. You carry the understanding that disciplined living is not a burden. It is a gift that gives back to you every single day in clarity, confidence, stability, and progress. You have arrived at a new chapter, not because the audiobook ends here, but because you have changed here. Your perspective, your mindset, your inner structure, your identity, everything has shifted in a way that cannot be undone. And now you move forward with an inner strength that guides you, with a focused mind that supports you, with a steady heart that grounds you. Discipline has become your foundation, and because of that, your potential has no ceiling. This moment is not an ending, it is the beginning of a disciplined life, a powerful life, a life shaped by deliberate choices and intentional actions, a life that reflects the strength you have always carried within you, now awakened, now activated, now ready to lead you into everything you are meant to become. And as you continue on your path, remember that discipline is not perfection, it is persistence. It is the commitment to rise again, continue again, focus again, return again, every single time you drift. Because successful people are not the ones who never fall, they are the ones who always return. You now have the strength to return again and again until your vision becomes your reality. Carry this forward, carry this energy, carry this clarity, because you are disciplined, You are driven, you are capable, you are becoming the person you were always meant to be, and this is only the beginning. Subscribe for more.